Hey everybody, it's Merlin here. Welcome to a brief little review I'm just kind of doing after seeing Venom. It's going to be a solo review, don't do too many of those. But yeah, I thought I'd kind of give you guys my thoughts on the movie. And if you don't really want to watch the whole video, you could just kind of get my summation this way. I liked it, but I didn't like the fact that I liked it. And I'm going to go into that in a little bit here. But if you haven't seen the movie yet already, know anything vaguely about Venom, you probably know what the basic plot of the movie is going to be. Tom Hardy plays Eddie Brock, the reporter, who kind of is about to lose everything, and he stumbles on this weird conspiracy plot with this evil scientist who finds the symbiotes and gets infected by the Venom creature and becomes Venom, becomes a superhero after that. Now, that is essentially what happens in the movie. I mean, really, the plot is pretty simple. The question is, does it deliver? And I think for the most part it does. I mean, the thing that really surprised me, and I will admit, going into this movie, I did not have the highest expectations for it. I thought it looked like it was going to be pretty bad, but it was mostly pretty enjoyable, to be completely honest. That really surprised me, and I think that the most important thing, for the most part, I'd say, is that they do get Venom. It's weird. They get Venom very right, and also kind of wrong at the same time, and I guess that's because they wanted to market it to make it more appealing so that they could sell it, so they could potentially make more movies. Although, once again, one of the problems I'm going to get into is I don't think there's going to be many more movies after this, no matter how successful it is. Though, I think it did pretty well, actually. People were interested in it. And the thing I think they got right, which I have to admit I did enjoy, is that when Venom is fully in his costume suit and he's talking like Venom, he's getting into Eddie Brock's mind, he's got the evil voice, and he's got that, really dark, vicious personality. He's talking about, eating things and eating people and how we can do everything that we want. He's really creepy, he's really alien, he's kind of threatening. That's Venom. That's that scary alien monster, right? But so that's pretty cool. He looks pretty cool. The visuals are good. His face looks good. They got the tongue down. I mean, yes. In that sense, comparatively speaking, compared to Spider-Man 3, of course, this Venom is much better. And they make Venom kind of the hero. They make Tom Hardy as Eddie Brock. He's kind of a journalist who's a bit of a hard ass. He doesn't always play by the rules, but he wants to help people. He wants to, get the story out there, get the information out there. In this version, he does kind of almost lose everything. What he basically does, he decides to kind of just disobey his boss and ask questions at this interview, which essentially loses him his job, loses him his reputation, his wife, gets kicked out of her house. I mean, rather, I guess it's his bride-to-be, his fiancée or whatever. And he goes back to his apartment, and he's struggling again. And in the comics, this is where it's a bit of a problem, because anyway, they make him kind of likable. He kind of does it to himself in the movie, whereas in the comics, he also does it to himself, but in very different circumstances. This one, he just kind of is still stumbling upon things. This one scientist lady that is working with the evil guy, but thinks that what he's doing is unethical. With the experiments he's doing with the symbiotes and the humans, she reaches out to Eddie Brock. He's like, I don't want anything to do with it. But then he goes back in. See, that's one of the things, though, is that he, much like the impetus for him losing everything, and then going back into the lab, it's like, you could just tell him this. You're a person that works there. Like, you already are endangering yourself and your family by inviting this journalist into this top secret facility you work for, which would, bare minimum, get you fired. In this case, would be worse for her because you're working for an evil, comic book bad guy. So, it's going to be worse circumstances for you. But she just lets him in there, and, the whole plan is kind of dumb. And that's the thing. The movie definitely is light on the plot. I mean, it's definitely light on really logical decisions for the characters to make. Like, he's not exactly the smartest guy, and the people in this movie aren't exactly the smartest. Even the villain's motivation, it's like, he's kind of interesting, I guess. Like, I want to use the symbiotes to advance humanity. He's got a god complex. Like, he's potentially interesting, but his plan, when he joins up with the symbiotes towards the end, is like, wait, what was your end goal here? How did you think this was going to work here? Believing these aliens that clearly just want to, like, wipe us out or enslave us? It's just like, for a guy who seemed really smart, wanted to subjugate, I don't know, I guess he kind of worshipped them. But anyway, I'm getting off track. The point is, there's a lot of little dumb things about the movie, but for the most part, the action's pretty fun. I do think some of the close-ups, particularly when Venom is fighting the other symbiote, were a little bit too fast, like you couldn't really take it all in, but for the most part, I thought it worked pretty well. I really liked it when Venom's fighting the SWAT team. I thought when he moving around in the mist was pretty cool. So the effects were pretty good. And I thought that they got the dynamic of him kind of sharing Eddie Brock's mind as well. I thought that was pretty enjoyable. So, on the whole, Venom is essentially just a superhero in this movie. And for the most part, it's pretty fun. It's got a sense of humor. It's doesn't take itself too seriously. But it looks good, and it seems like it's dedicated to the visuals and the general atmosphere that comes with the character of Venom, right? So in that sense, it made me happy. Like, ooh, that's Venom. That's Venom. He's being like Venom and tearing people up and eating people and biting people's heads off. You know, bad guys, mostly. And they kind of go over, you know, the lethal protector thing, which is kind of a line in the comics they've done before. Now, so as a movie, I think it was okay. I thought it was enjoyable. It was a decent comic book superhero movie. I've certainly seen far worse, okay? But as a long-standing Spider-Man fan and someone who grew up reading Venom and followed the character pretty consistently over the years, I guess. I mean, you know, I have always known Venom for what he primarily is. I don't think anybody will dispute me on this. Eddie Brock's Venom, typically, is a villain. He is one of Spider-Man's greatest villains. The last video I did, I actually talked a little bit about it. Literally, when you come up the general conversation with Spider-Man, who are his greatest villains? Who are his main villains? You got the Green Goblin, Dr. Octopus, Venom. Okay? This is like, I don't know if that's ever been officially stated anywhere, but this is kind of like generally accepted. Venom is one of the great Spider-Man villains. Because Venom is creepy. He's got the aesthetics of a villain. I mean, look at him. I know that there's plenty of anti-heroes like Spawn, you know, or maybe Blade, who they come off looking kind of intimidating, and they're definitely on the fine line. They do questionable things, but they're still good guys. Venom, you know, is very much a product of the 90s, too, where they tried to kind of do that, and they have had lines where Venom is kind of a hero, Lethal Protector, like I mentioned before, but typically those aren't long-running comics, and I think that's because typically Venom serves himself best as a villain, or at the very least as a supporting character, you know, anti-hero, who I don't think can really sustain his own books for very long, which, even though I did enjoy this movie, I think is clearly evident that they're not going to have the most product here, you know, and as the end scene kind of showed, which I totally called like a mile away, because where else could you go with it? But that's kind of my big problem with the movie from a creative standpoint as far as an adaptation goes. I know, of course, you know, you could go with the argument that with different writers and different interpretations, you could take the character different directions. Sure, maybe you could develop them, but this Eddie Brock is pretty much a bumbling, nice guy. Maybe a little rough around the edges, but he's a nice guy, very likable. Anybody who has read most Spider-Man comics with Venom in it, especially from the earlier lore, Venom started out as a questionable guy. I mean, Eddie Brock was a journalist, but he, you know, he would frame people, he would set things up so that he could almost, you know, make it so that crimes happen, so that he could be the one to get the scoop, kind of putting people in danger. He was egotistical, he was arrogant, he was a jerk, he, you know, he tried to basically constantly kill Spider-Man because he was obsessed with him, because he blamed him for ruining his career because he proved one of his stories was incorrect. And so he is obsessed with Spider-Man, and Venom's obsessed with Spider-Man, which is one of the primary attributes of both aspects of the Venom character. And with Spider-Man not a part of this origin story, you kind of felt that that was missing. Like, even the saying, oh, you know, this impetus that is the source of the Venom bond with Brock here because of this evil scientist guy and his plans, it works. It's serviceable for this version, I guess, but it does feel a bit underwritten and kind of weak. Kind of like Venom's desire, the Venom symbiote's desire to just become a good person because he's like, you changed me, Eddie. Which I guess, symbiotically speaking, maybe the hosts do have an effect on the symbiote too. Sure, but even that was pretty quick. It wasn't adequately explained, I thought. So, from a writing standpoint, like I said, some things weren't the strongest. And yeah, Eddie Brock was just kind of an a-hole and primarily a villain, and a great villain. And I think that, yes, as good as he was in this, I was thinking, this is a good movie, But it would be great if we saw this version of Venom tangling with Spider-Man and being creepy and being a villain and threatening him and Aunt May and Mary Jane like he typically does. So it was enjoyable. You know, this version of Venom that is more of an anti-hero, I've seen it work, but this is the thing. As good as this was, and I don't think it was fantastic, I think it was just good. It was solid, I guess. It was enjoyable. But there isn't a lot of direction to go in here. There isn't much more I think they can get out of this character because, I mean, I guess they could bring in other symbiotes, but the problem is they kind of already did that. Now, what did they do? Spoilers. What I'd expected they do, they have, of course, the end credit or kind of mid-credit sequence where they tease Carnage, who's Woody Harrelson. It's Cletus Cassidy, which on one hand, he plays a lot of Southern characters, I'm fine, but his wig was kind of bad. And I was just like, I don't know. So, okay, maybe there's going to be Venom versus Carnage. Cool. But that's kind of it, right? I mean, the Venom versus Carnage thing can only go so far, too. So, okay, that's cool. I could see that. If you're going to have one villain for Venom, it would be Carnage. If you can't get Spider-Man directly in there, sure. And Carnage I always liked even more than Venom, even though he's not even less of a deep character. He's just a psycho who kills people, and he's even more, you know, to be verbally adequate and descriptive. But no, he is like, you know, Venom, but obviously worse. So fine. He's more of a threat. I mean, it'd be really cool if, you know, So yeah, I mean, I'm like, okay, maybe I'll see that movie, but I think that's about as far as they can go without having Venom be a villain. And they've already established that this version is a hero and won't be directly connected to Spider-Man, I guess. He's got to be part of this new Venom Sony universe. Yeah, Sony's Marvel universe. You know, if that really gets off the ground, and maybe we'll get a couple movies out of it because I guess this one was fairly successful. But I don't know. I have mixed feelings because I'm like, I feel like, okay, they made the Venom movie work. They showed that they could kind of do Venom correctly, which shows potential for things in the future. But you've got, and I'm like, okay, if they did that, maybe they can make Morbius interesting, give him his own movie. Maybe they can give Black Cat her own movie. That's cool. But these characters are not major forces. They are primarily supporting characters for a reason. I don't know if a consistent universe at the same level of Marvel can really be created here. So, I don't know how much output they're really going to be able to get from this, but this was a decent start. I did think it was enjoyable. I think I'd give it like a B, you know, maybe a B+. It was fun. It was fine. But, you know, it was a little choppy with the script. A lot of characters were kind of flat and made some dumb decisions, but it was pretty clear it was just to service the plot. The action was mostly pretty good. There was some humor. I thought Tom Hardy was decent, though I wasn't completely sure what accent he was going for. I kind of like the original voice of Venom from the commercials. They kind of changed it again. But yeah, I mean, it was fine. It was fun. It was enjoyable. But as a hardcore comic book geek that, you know, really was a big Spider-Man fan back in the day and still is, and really loved Venom as a great villain that was scary and weird and creepy, this one was just kind of... It was a little mixed for me. I was able to kind of just put that aside because I'm like, they did this well. Even though I do not believe it's fully true to the character, I'm like, they made it work. But even so, I don't know how far they can really take it because of how the character ultimately is. Like how far can they take it? Never know. But I still don't sense that they can do a lot of that. But anyway, those are my thoughts on Venom. What did you guys think about it if you saw it? I mean, if you haven't seen it, I'd recommend it. It was actually a good time in the theater. But yeah, let me know what you guys thought. What do you guys think they'll do for the next movies? How do you feel about the Sony Marvel Universe? How that's going to do? Yeah, let me know in the comments below. And I'm going to get some more videos to you guys. I got another superhero-related video coming out that has to do with a certain show coming back to Netflix this month. And then I'm going to have a Halloween-oriented video, also kind of October-related. So that should give you an idea of future videos to look forward to. And I'm going to get around to doing some patron requests. So if you guys do want to get some full Merlin reviews, specific requests, feel free to donate on my Patreon. You can check it out there. Every few bucks helps, keeps the channel growing so I can upgrade, get new mic, other things like that. All right, everybody. Have a wonderful night. Stay magical.